Do you need to re-thermal paste your GPU? The other day, my brother asked for some help with his PC. He was having some issues with his PC. His PC started doing a weird thing where it would turn off on its own. He thought that it could be an overheating issue. Now, initially, when you say an overheating issue in terms of PC, my brain, and I think commonly people's brains will go to the CPU. Because I had an issue with it fairly recently where my all-in-one liquid cooler decided to break a little bit and my CPU temperatures went through the roof. But that was our initial thoughts, was that it could be CPU related and maybe the CPU needed more new thermal paste adding. I ordered some new thermal paste for that. While we were waiting for that to be delivered, he then discovered that it could actually be his GPU that was overheating because it was getting to like 110, 111 degrees on the hotspot. Now, I've never taken apart a GPU in order to try and repaste it in any way, shape or form. It's not particularly difficult. I say that as somebody who has now done it once successfully. That is 100% success rate, I will say. It wasn't as difficult as I thought it'd be, but it is definitely more of a complicated and a little bit more delicate process than doing the CPU. So the idea was we're going to start by giving his computer a good deep clean and just get rid of all the dust. We're going to thermal paste his CPU. We're going to repaste that anyway, purely because when he bought this PC, probably about 5 years ago now, since then he may have cleaned it once. Other than that, it's never had the thermal paste redone on it. It's definitely never had its GPU thermal pasted again, which I'm not entirely sure is something that you should have to do very often. It's not something I've ever done previously, not something I've ever had to do previously, but maybe with graphics cards going the way they are, how powerful they are, how much heat they dissipate and things like that, maybe it's something that we need to be able to do, or we need to do more often, or think about at least. To say this was a dirty PC is a little bit of an understatement. Fans that were originally transparent had become brown with just dust and bits of yuckiness. He has moved this PC back and forth to and from university over the past couple of years, and at no point, because he's your classic stereotypical university student, he has not cleaned it. Like a lot of people, he doesn't know a hell of a lot about building PCs. He bought this pre-built. He didn't want to faff around, take cables out of motherboards, remove motherboards. He was worried that he'd break something, or, you know, he'd not plug it in correctly or misplug it in or something and do some damage. Now, realistically, I think PCs are actually quite easy to build. I don't think it's that difficult. And I think if you really want to do it and you're, you know, sensible about it, you follow some YouTube tutorials, it's not that difficult to build or put together a PC. I can understand him being a little bit nervous about it, but it is definitely something that any normal person can do. The first port of call was to disassemble the PC. We had to take the motherboard out. I decided to take the motherboard out, like we went full GPU out. Obviously that was going to come out anyway. I decided, after seeing the amount of dust and stuff that was in just the case and around the motherboard and on connectors and pins and stuff on the motherboard, I was like, no, we're taking this fully apart. We're going to clean it all. So we disassembled the entire PC, we took the motherboard out, we took all the fans out, and we gave everything a good, deep clean. I would like to get a PC cleaning duster blower fan thing. I haven't got one of those, and I didn't even buy any compressed air because I wasn't really prepared for how dusty it was going to be. So I didn't have any of that, so we just gave it sort of a wipe down with a cloth, and a lot of lung air was used to clean that PC and some of its components. Not necessarily recommended. Again, compressed air is a good option, but maybe like a reusable electric blower would be a good idea. I've seen a couple on Amazon. I very nearly bought one, but I decided not to. Anyway, we then took off the CPU cooler, had a look at that. Now, the thermal paste on the CPU was, I would say, quite dry. It sort of like chipped away. So we used some isopropyl alcohol and some like cotton wool swabs to clean that off, make sure it's nice and clean on the CPU side and on the cooler side, and then put some new thermal paste on there. That should last a good few years before we even need to think about doing that again. Again, it's hard to say. It's depending on what thermal paste brand or model, etc. you use. Again, I don't know. Different ones have different heat dissipations and different thicknesses, liquidity and stuff like that, how viscous they are. They're going to vary. It's going to vary. But in my mind, the most important thing is you keep an eye on temperatures. That's the most important thing you can do. And if temperatures look to be getting a little bit high, yes, you probably want to re-thermal paste it. It might seem daunting if you've never done it before, but it's actually not that bad. So after we did all this, put it all back together, put the GPU back in. Again, we cleaned the GPU fans, but we didn't at this point take it apart because there was a chance in my mind that maybe his GPU was just being choked out by the fact that the airflow to the case, because of how dusty it was not getting to the GPU, and therefore the GPU was getting a little bit hot. You try and identify the problems as the simplest to fix first and go down that route when you're trying to fix something. You don't immediately think, I must take apart the most expensive, the biggest piece of equipment. You go from like simplest, easiest to do, cheapest to do, and you do all those things to check where the actual error is coming from. That's kind of how you want to problem solve these things. So we put it all back together with everything now just cleaned and the CPU re-thermal pasted, and we let it run Heaven benchmark for a while so that we could see what the temperatures got to. Heaven is effectively just a benchmarking software. Push your PC to run some intense graphics and stuff that will gain a little bit of heat for your PCs. In doing that, it was clear that we had not fixed the problem and the GPU hotspot was still high. The GPU in question is a 6900 XT, I believe. Higher end card of a few years ago, but it's still higher end card. So yeah, these things get hot. Same with like higher end CPUs, you get sort of the i9s and stuff like that. They tend to run hotter than the lower end i5s, etc. That's just how these things work. But even that, having looked it up and done a little bit of Googling and Redditing and looking for what should the top end of this hotspot temperature be, it managed to reach like 115 or 116, something like that, which was above even like what the internet said was a reasonable top end. At that point, we settled on the fact that we were going to have to take out the GPU, we're going to have to take it apart and get to the die, the actual physical chip on the board, and we're going to have to clean the thermal paste off that and repaste it. Now, we didn't want to have to deal with changing the thermal pads, which are on there to cool some of the other components of the GPU, because they differ from different models of card, different manufacturers of cards, and it's not always easy to track down exactly what thickness of those you want to have. Now, they are a certain thickness because the GPU is sandwiched together and you want the thermals to be able to be taken away by the thermal pad and then dissipated. And you want those to have good contact, basically, which is why they are certain thicknesses in certain different areas of the card. And again, they differ from model to model, brand to brand. We didn't have any thermal pads, so we were hoping that we wouldn't have to go as far as replacing those. In the end, we didn't. We took out all the screws from the back of the GPU. Again, just took out all the screws I thought I needed to take out that I could see, and we managed to disassemble it into where the fans and the sort of heatsink flipped over, still connected to its like RGB, I think was the cable that was connected, but we could flip it open, and then I could access the actual die itself, the chip on the board. Repasting a GPU is a bit different to repasting a CPU. With a CPU, I've always done it in a way that you can put an X or a line or a dot in the middle, whatever method you do. But the idea is you put it on there, and then the cooler itself, once it's attached and tightened down to whatever tightness it's supposed to be, once the screws are tight, however it fits, then squeezes the paste to cover the whole CPU area. That's always the theory I've gone down. Now with a GPU, I have been told it is different. It is not necessarily how that works. With a GPU, you do want to make sure that you actually spatula and smooth it so it already is like buttered toast and it is completely covering every area of the die. You cannot see a part of that chip that is not covered with thermal paste. That's what I've been told. That's what I researched. Again, every piece of my PC building knowledge pretty much is self-taught from the internet. I did a tiny bit in sixth form at school, which was like 15 years ago at this point. I'm very self-taught in this, but I do try and do my research as best as possible, and that seems to be the method that a lot of people are recommending you use. Now, you can do this with a CPU as well. There's no reason you can't, but I'm just saying it doesn't seem to be as much of a problem if you don't do this with a CPU as it is if you don't do this with a GPU. You don't want to get a hot spot on that die because that's not good. Then again, the hotspot will end up being hot, and the hotspot was the problem we were having a problem with anyway. I had a couple of attempts at this because I cleaned off the die, made sure it was all nice and clean, and I put a little, I didn't want to overdo it, so I put little by little thermal paste on it, and I was trying to spread it out, but it was sticking to the spatula a bit, and I wasn't quite happy with the full coverage I was getting because I wasn't quite getting full coverage. So I did clean it off a couple times. I think it was about my third attempt. I was pretty happy with how covered it was. So once I'd done that, put the GPU back together again, and there's 4 screws that actually tighten down the bit that goes over the chip that really like provides that pressure that you need to get that thermal paste working. So we did that. Put it back in the PC. And now it was time to run Heaven again and compare temperatures and compare benchmark scores, because theoretically, if we had made the temperature drop, if we had improved the temperature and it was no longer hitting those high temperatures it was getting before, we should then also improve performance, gain FPS, gain score in Heaven, for example. So again, we ran it and we let it run and we let it run and we let it run, and it got nowhere near. It was a much better temperature than it had got previously. Clearly, doing the thermal paste had made a significant impact. It had made an improvement, and the score and the FPS had also improved in the Heaven benchmark. Jake had not only now a clean PC, but also a PC that was better performing. So all in all, win for Jake. He didn't pay me any money to do that. And I think I paid for the thermal paste. So I did it completely off my own back, but it's content for you guys. I love building PCs. I love messing around with PCs. It's fun for me. I enjoy it. I love problem solving. It's so enjoyable for me. It's a fun thing for me. I'm a nerd. I just enjoy messing around with PCs, but it's always nice to be able to actually achieve something, to set out a goal and achieve it. And that's what we did. It is making me think slightly, I wonder if my GPU needs to be repasted, which I'm scared of doing because it's my GPU. And if I mess it up, it's going to cost me a lot of money to replace it. And that makes me a bit sad. I think it's not got to that point yet, but there is a possibility that in the future I might need to do that. But now having done it once, I feel more confident in doing it again. So there we go. I've kind of answered the question. Do you need to re-thermal paste your GPU? Maybe. Again, much like the CPU, the paste on the GPU was very crumbly. Again, I don't know whether that's an age thing, it's showing it's not doing a good job, or whether that's just that particular thermal paste that was used goes to that consistency. I don't really know. But what I do know is when we added new thermal paste, we improved the temperatures and we improved the performance of his PC. And it wasn't that difficult. It really wasn't. If you've done a little bit of PC tinkering before, if you've done a little bit of PC building, I think it's totally achievable for you to do this. Obviously, you always want to be careful, and I wasn't necessarily using the best techniques maybe. We were taking things apart and building it on a carpet, which is probably not the best idea. 1, for my back, because I was bent over trying to fix everything while sat in the chair. But 2, static is something that has been mentioned a lot in terms of PC building. I don't think it's really as dangerous as it can be, but clearly things can go wrong and you can break stuff if you are not careful. So try and be careful if you're doing these things, but don't be scared. It's not that bad, and genuinely, I have never broken a part whilst trying to fix, build, make a computer. So there we go. Now you guys know. Congrats to Jake on his new, fully working, better performing PC. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you again next time. Bye!